When I was at the Pit News writing the Ritual Descent sometime in the 80s, I had an article called Mysticism in the Bomb. And I felt when I came across it later and read it again that it was quite possibly the best essay that was written in the 80s, other than Louis Lapham's editorial um, about the war on drugs. Lapham had waited until December of 1989 to publish it, I've always felt, so that nobody pushed him out of his pride of place as the greatest editorialist of the 80s. Of course, he was covering for things that he knew, which made it not only the best editorial, but also most despicably hypocritical editorial. And I'm sure that one of the reasons why he withheld the information he did was because he knew that I could write. What would happen if he had shared the information and he had gotten back to the author of Ritual Descent? One time when I was in my 20s, through no fault of my own, at the insistence of the Myron family, for whatever reason, they wanted me to work the curtain at the Pirates of Penzance. I didn't really want to. I'm deaf and was nervous that I would miss signals, but they insisted. Two girls were very frenetic in one scene, and it was enjoyable. I thought it brought excitement to the stage. They would whisper to each other and make pointing gestures at what was going on. It had obviously excited them to be on stage with the great of the Pittsburgh Savoyards or whoever they were. And shortly before we actually went on before an audience, they stopped doing it in that scene. I was curious. I asked them why did they stop. It's the only time I ever talked to them. They said they were told to stop by the lead. I still couldn't understand. I wasn't engaging the crew at all. I was just backstage as a hired hand. I wasn't even paid. I was just a volunteer hand working the curtains in the Pirates of Penzance. And I asked the lead man, why did you tell them to stop? And he sort of barked at me that they were upstaging him. Seemed like a peculiar provincial sentiment. But I let the matter drop. If I had been more savvy, I might have developed an understanding of the meaning to some people of being upstaged. I know that when I referred to my article calling for divestment from apartheid, South Africa over apartheid, Nelson Harrison characterized it as interference. I think what we have is a situation in America where it's not what nobody will tell you that you can't say what you want to say. You can't write a letter, get it published. You can't read a poem at an open mic. You can read a poem at an open mic. You can express your opinions online, but they will wire up consequences. They can't stop you from saying it, but boy, can they make it hurt that you did. A lot of my terrible pilgrimage through the cheese slicer of Richard Starkey's head trips has come from his bellowing moronicism about the idea of there being a walrus. No, nobody in their right mind would have mistaken Jimmy Carrey for John Lennon. That was hardly the point. The point was getting hope to people, making them aware. And I proposed to work with Maduri Goto, even romantically, to draw attention, the limelight to the fact that this crossroads had been hot-wired and we needed to try to get the better of it. What went wrong with his mind? that he would see something that was meant to help people and meant to apprehend a gang that went on to release COVID as upstaging him. You know, open mic bullies are very dangerous. Tulsi Gabbard talks about how we used to go out, meaning we the people, and meet in town halls and discuss the issues before we voted or made changes. Now we're dominated by a hierarchy of puppeteers who manufacture confusing non reality that we're all supposed to subscribe to. And they draw a grinding halt at questioning how deep it really can go with their fake um, representation of what's real, to manipulate people by sentiments that are deeply ingrained through the entertainment system and loyalty to celebrities. What made somebody as popular and talented as Penis Gabriel, Moja, that by interviewing him, I was seeking to dislodge him or upstage him. I remember wondering what I did wrong that made them so evil towards me. Of course, they engaged me. They didn't. They were like Roger Waters, the famous story of him coaxing a little boy to come forward to the stage, and when he got close enough, spat on him. That was a gentle example of what Fripp and Gabriel were really up to when it came to me. You know, they were telling me, "I love you, man," so they can poison me in the mouth. And this is the reality of the situation. I mean, I'm terribly in danger. They've rip or murdered people. They've killed several Kennedys, and somehow or another, they still managed to masquerade in clear vengeance attacks for the Axis of World War II. They still managed to masquerade as somehow the victims of what happened. And, you know, they subscribe, you're supposed to subscribe to this idea because they didn't do anything about it. So many people were affected who might have been protected. Therefore, they are the victims. That's how it operates. And when you question the logic, you get in response from like the New York Times operator Cameron Barron at Carnegie Mellon back in the 90s. People are weird. I think it was his friend David McWade who said that. So it's to be excused. People are weird. You know, why did soldiers rape women? People were weird. You know, well, the thing is that we mustn't dehumanize the Russians. I'm in agreement about that. I don't know that they're really that different. What we see is, however, that the governmental fixtures are very discredited. You know, from what I saw of some of the Russian soldier POWs, they had conscience and heart. I don't know how to explain the complete lack of remorse that exists in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, towards a little boy who was kicked in the head and tortured and gassed and then used for this horrendous experiment that gets the endorsement from America's Russia, which is New York City. You know, I don't know how to explain the remorselessness except that it's clearly a form of Nazism. And you know, nobody ever apologized to me that I was run out of town into 2 years of homelessness by a man who was then arrested on an $8 million museum heist when I was one of the people who tried to whistleblow on him. I was accused of starting rumors. To this day, they're trying to say that they stole my father's stamp collection, which was given to me, and tore up his cashmere coat because a vigorgy of society, mind reading idea of pure debt. Like somebody handed me a J and I inhaled, so they get to steal my stamp collection. And that's their idea of reason. That's their logic. And if you ask why did that happen, it's because you tried to upstage Penis Gabriel. I didn't try to upstage anybody. And I remember wondering, why are they doing this? You know, like Amanda Harcourt, that reprehensible Hun, that weird ripper from the Hair Society scene, said, I received your package and was reading your story over dinner, to the point where Peter kept asking me what it was I was reading. I insisted that it come from me and not for him. Well, was he inventing the idea that I didn't want to talk to him so that he could justify the idea that I was trying to upstage him? Because that's pretty weird. When all I was doing was trying to accept, a marginalized place somewhere where I might be safe among creative artists who interested me, so I could show my gratitude to them. They weren't having it. What they had was an idea of how to torture me and make people laugh. So I don't believe, for example, that people like Putin don't have a sense of humor, as Zelensky says. I think they got a big laugh out of what was done to me. And they did it together, you know, and it's sickening. Nobody can explain how could anybody justify um, threatening the world with the children of the world, murdering with nuclear war. I mean, it's obscene. I've never. That's the reason why I wrote Mysticism in the Bomb in the first place. Was it seemed like Reagan was in some kind of weird hookah trance, where he was no, 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 his way to a detonation that would consummate his brain deranged idea of the Old Testament God, like Lindsey Graham calling up, 211P and saying, dial the priest, please. Could you tell me what's going on with climate change? And dial the priest saying, here's the will of God, Lindsey. And Lindsey saying, thank you, I thought so. It just seemed very I wasn't at all dismissive. I just couldn't believe anybody else wasn't dismissive. Anybody who would vote for someone. You get these kinds of people who are on the fringe who manage to get their name onto the ballot in Seattle, and when you read them, it's like the lack of punctuation, lack of thematic reasoning. It's just like a weird stack of strange ideas, and doesn't seem any better when you look at somebody like Reagan, you know. But I mean, the world has seen some pretty sick leaders, but always groping for somebody who they compare to Hitler, while never admitting that the person who resembled Hitler most of all was Reagan, with his anti-communism and his personality cult and his military chauvinism. But I think ultimately, I'll close on the point of military chauvinism. Black people opposed Martin Luther King's stand against the Vietnam War because they were getting fast cars and nice houses and cool women and access to the highways and the super hotels and show business by going along with the war efforts. And they saw the gravy train in the Vietnam War, and they'll never abandon that. For them, it wasn't the quality of the ideas, it was the badge that wore the bragging rights of being heard, and that's how the whole idea of a cogent argument for divesting from South Africa could be regarded as interference and upstaging the mighty, even though nobody else wrote an essay like that for the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Nobody else wrote an essay like Mysticism and the Bomb for Pitt News, which I think probably stands the test of time. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But I remember reading it and thinking that was a pretty good essay, you know? So don't ask me to make sense of what these experimental monsters have been doing because I can't make sense of it. Please do not ask me to make sense of it. It doesn't make sense to me that anybody would want to chemically castrate me over a girl who was still a virgin. It doesn't make sense to me that anybody would want to rape a mentally retarded deaf girl with epilepsy. It doesn't make sense to me that anybody would bomb a theater that was clearly marked as having children inside. It doesn't make sense to me. Don't ask me. Please don't ask me to make sense of lewd, horrible invasion of Iraq and the bombing of a school bus in Yemen. It has something to do with the Fernhaldo gangs seething over the nature of reality. I know that much. Pitt psychology, psychopath, and UW dialectical sociology are at work and creaming and screaming and drooling and gnashing. Ringo, yeah, Ringo, yeah.